Today, Penny Pinchers, you get to watch me make bread. I know this isn't going to be the perfect setup for you to see everything, but hopefully I can take some of the fear out of it for you because it's really simple. I use my bread machine. You know, my bread machine's got a little basket and then it's got the paddle. So I just squeeze that down in there and pop it in. And every bread machine's got their own little instruction guide on what order you should add the ingredients. Yeah, I don't know where mine is. So this is probably way off from what it should be, but this is how I do it. First of all, I'm going to proof my yeast. So just to make sure that the water temperature is between 100 and 110, I've got my pocket thermometer and I'm checking it. And it is perfect right at 108. So I've got my yeast and I dump it in there. I'm going to give it a little stir just till it dissolves. And I'm going to dump this in first. And I know a lot of the bread machines say put all your wet on the bottom and then put your flour and then dig a little hole and put your yeast in it. Well, I always do it this way and it never seems to mess anything up. It turns out just great. While I'm stirring this, let me remind you that a couple of weeks ago I did Frugal Tools in the Kitchen, talked about the different ways you can make bread. If you don't have a bread machine, it's okay. It just happens to be the easiest for me. I've also used my KitchenAid mixer with a dough hook. I've heard of people using a food processor. So it's whatever you have available, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time. It's probably going to take me longer to dissolve the yeast in this warm water than it will to put the rest of the stuff in the bread machine. So we're almost there here. I could have done this before I started the video, but I wanted you to see how easy it is. After this is dissolved, I'm going to go ahead and let me go ahead and tell you this. I've got everything pre-measured, and if you notice, my measuring cups, I don't know if you can see it at this distance, but they might look dirty. They're not. I sprayed them with non-stick cooking spray because I'm dealing with honey and molasses, and I don't want to have to spend all day scraping those out. So what I do is I use the non-stick cooking spray in my measuring cups so that whenever I go to pour, it slides right out. All right, we are there on my yeast. It is all mixed in, nice and dissolved. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that in. I do put that in first, as you can see. Then I'm going to add my molasses. This has been sitting here for a little while, so it's a little bit stuck because my camera was broken. It took me a while this morning to figure out what was wrong. Then I've got honey. This recipe can be found on food.com. I'll give you the link to it so you can see. And it's not a whole wheat bread, but it is a wheat bread. The difference between a whole wheat and a wheat is that whole wheat is all wheat flour, and this has got 2 cups of white flour. So I've got that in there. I've got my softened butter all chunked up. It just goes right in there next. 1 teaspoon of salt. Put that in there. White flour. And let me show you, just in case you didn't know, the correct way to do flour. You're going to need to sift it first. I keep all of my flour in Rubbermaid containers just for safety. And so first you sift it. Give it a good sift. And then you take 1 cup, a smaller cup, and measure it into your larger cup. This is called spooning. I mean, you could use a little spoon. I just find that it's a whole lot quicker. And then you use a level to just smooth it out. So that's 1 cup. Why do you do this? Because if you're just dipping in with your measuring cup, you're actually adding ounces. And while you might think, well, that's not going to make a whole lot of difference, it does. And especially when you're baking, because the weight of your flour will affect your rising. And you definitely want your bread to rise appropriately. I do this anytime that I'm baking. Now, if I'm just cooking with flour, making a gravy or something, it's not necessary. So there's my 3 cups of wheat flour. Dumping that in there right on top. I plug in my bread machine and close it. Set it to the dough cycle and go. I'm gonna let that stir and mix. It'll beep at me whenever it's done with the first rise. I take it out after that and we'll see you then.